The Estrella Fugaz vibrated softly as the engines roared in unison, propelling us into the infinite. The command cabin was a hive of activity, with flashing lights and data-filled screens. The murmur of hundreds of refugees echoed through the ship's metal corridors. Alexei Kirov, standing next to the navigation console, watched intently the holographic star map projected before him. His fingers drummed against the console's edge, a reflection of the tension he felt. "Captain, the crew is ready, but there's nervousness among the refugees," reported Zara, his security officer, while checking her own control panel. Alexei nodded, his jaw tight. He knew that the journey through the Calyx corridor wouldn't be easy. The Scar-ADH, alien pirates, prowled that route, lurking for vulnerable ships. "I know, Zara. Make an announcement, ensure everyone is prepared." His voice was firm, though he couldn't entirely hide his own concern. Zara nodded and moved to the intercom. "Attention all passengers and crew. We are approaching the Calyx corridor. Stay calm and follow safety instructions. Together, we will get through this." The engine's hum intensified as we neared the corridor. Suddenly, an alarm blared in the cabin, and the sensors began flashing urgently. "Anomaly detected in the Calyx corridor, Captain," reported Zara, her voice filled with tension. Alexei leaned over the console, studying the data. "Looks like we have company," he said, pointing to the readings showing several unidentified energy signatures approaching. "What do we do?" Zara asked, her eyes fixed on Alexei. The captain straightened, his mind working quickly. They could attempt an alternative route, but that would mean considerable delay and more unknown dangers. "We proceed," he finally decided, his voice firm. "I'll trust my navigation skills. We'll hide in the nearby nebula if necessary." Zara nodded, and the decision was sealed. The Estrella Fugaz moved forward into the Calyx corridor, the engines roaring as the ship ventured into the unknown. The stars outside seemed brighter, more threatening. Alexei took a deep breath, preparing for what was to come. "Let the game begin," he murmured, his eyes fixed on the stellar horizon. The Estrella Fugaz was ready to face any challenge that lay ahead. The warning lights flashed in the cabin, accompanied by an alarming beep. Alexei leaned over the console, his eyes fixed on the readings. "Captain, we have multiple energy signatures approaching," reported Zara, her voice calm but edged with concern. The screens showed the Scar-ADH ships surrounding the Estrella Fugaz. The pirates, with their dark and menacing hulls, emerged from the darkness like predators seeking their prey. "Damn Scar-ADH," murmured Alexei, clenching his fists. He knew this moment would come, but he hadn't expected it so soon. A crackle resonated through the speakers, and a guttural, mocking voice filled the cabin. "Human ship, surrender immediately. Hand over your cargo, and perhaps we will let you live." Alexei exchanged a quick look with Zara. The tension was palpable. "Captain, what do we do?" asked Zara, her hands poised over the controls. Alexei took a deep breath, his thoughts racing. Surrendering the ship would mean condemning the refugees to slavery or worse. It was not an option. "Prepare the shields and all weapons." "We're going to try something risky," said Alexei, his voice firm. Zara nodded and began working on the controls. The panels glowed as the ship prepared for combat. "Listen up, everyone," said Alexei over the intercom, addressing the crew and refugees. "We are facing Scar-ADH pirates. Stay calm and prepare for evasive maneuvers. We will not let them capture us." The tension in the ship increased, but Alexei could feel the determination in every person on board. "Zara, I need you to plot a course to the nearby nebula." "We'll hide there," ordered Alexei. "Understood, Captain," responded Zara, her fingers flying over the controls. The Estrella Fugaz began to move, its engines roaring as Alexei guided it through a series of sharp turns and twists. The Scar-ADH ships fired, but Alexei skillfully maneuvered, dodging the attacks. "We're almost there," announced Zara, looking at the sensors. "The nebula is just seconds away." With a final push, the Estrella Fugaz dived into the nebula. The dense gas clouds enveloped the ship, hiding it from the pirates' sensors. "Keep the systems to a minimum." "We don't want to be detected," said Alexei, his voice a whisper. The Estrella Fugaz floated silently in the heart of the nebula. Outside, The Scar-88 ships patrolled, searching for their lost prey. Alexei leaned back in his seat, releasing the breath he had been holding. "For now, we're safe," he said, looking at Zara. "But we can't stay here forever." Zara nodded, her expression serious. "We'll have to think carefully about our next move, Captain." Alexei looked at the shadows moving beyond the cabin window. "I know, but for now, we've bought ourselves some time." The Estrella Fugaz remained hidden in the nebula, preparing for the next challenge that would undoubtedly come. The Estrella Fugaz floated silently within the nebula, the dense gas clouds enveloping it like a protective cloak. In the cabin, the warning lights flickered faintly, barely illuminating the tense faces of the crew. "Keep the systems to a minimum, Zara," murmured Alexei, his eyes fixed on the sensors. "We don't want to be detected." Zara nodded, adjusting the controls. But the relief was short-lived. A silent alarm vibrated on the console. "Captain, we have company," said Zara, her voice low but urgent. "The Scar-88 have found us." Alexei cursed under his breath. The screens showed several enemy ships rapidly approaching, their threatening silhouettes outlined against the bright backdrop of the nebula. "Prepare for counterattack. Zara, gather your team. We're going to disable their flagship. It's our only chance." Zara nodded and headed to the boarding bay, where her team awaited, equipped with space suits and heavy weaponry. "I'll see you on the other side," said Alexei, giving her a firm pat on the shoulder. The Scar-88 flagship loomed like a dark shadow through the mist. Zara and her team slipped through the vacuum of space, approaching stealthily. But as they reached the enemy ship's hatch, things quickly went awry. "Ambush!" shouted one of the team members as plasma shots crossed the space. Zara moved agilely, returning fire and covering her team. However, a shot struck her in the side, and she fell to the ground, her suit stained red. "Zara!" Alexei shouted through the intercom, watching the scene unfold on the cabin screen. The crew on the Estrella Fugaz watched in shock, the silence broken only by the beeping alarms. "We need to get them out of there," said Alexei, his mind racing. But the situation was critical. With Zara wounded and her team decimated, the options were limited. "Captain, what do we do?" asked one of the officers, desperation evident in his voice. Alexei took a deep breath. Surrendering the ship would mean the end for everyone on board. He couldn't allow it. "We move forward. We'll use the nebula to our advantage. I'll maneuver the ship so the Scar-88 can't get a clear shot at us," he said, his voice firm and determined. With Zara and her team fighting for their lives, Alexei put his plan into action. The Estrella Fugaz moved quickly through the gas clouds, using the terrain to confuse the pirates. The Scar-88 ship's shots got lost in the mist, unable to find a clear target. "We're buying some time, but we can't keep this up much longer," said one of the officers, looking at the energy indicators. Alexei nodded, his eyes shining with determination. "We just need a little more. Prepare to retrieve Zara and her team. We won't leave them behind." As the enemy ships struggled to locate them, the Estrella Fugaz moved like a ghost, dodging and evading every attack. The crew worked in perfect sync, each movement calculated precisely. Finally, Alexei saw his opportunity. "Now," he ordered, and the Estrella Fugaz surged forward, creating a corridor in the nebula. Zara and her team, fighting with all they had left, managed to return to the ship. With Zara gravely wounded, she was quickly taken to the infirmary. Alexei watched the Scar-88 ships fade into the distance as the Estrella Fugaz moved away, heading towards Neoterra. "We did it," he murmured, feeling a mix of relief and concern. But this is just the beginning. Zara and her team were safe, but the fight was far from over. The Estrella Fugaz continued its journey, ever closer to its destination, ever more determined to survive. The interior of the Estrella Fugaz was controlled chaos. Sparks flew from damaged consoles, and the hum of overloaded systems resonated in the cabin. Alexei ran a hand over his face, feeling the accumulated fatigue. "Status report," he demanded, his voice hoarse but authoritative. "Shields at 30%, jump engines offline." "We have few options left, Captain," reported Zara, her face pale, still recovering from her injuries. The refugees, crowded in the common areas, murmured among themselves, their faces reflecting fear and despair. Alexei felt a knot in his stomach as he looked at them. They couldn't fail them. "Captain, the Scar-80H are closing in. We have 5 ships approaching rapidly," warned one of the officers, his eyes fixed on the sensors. Alexei looked at the holographic star map. The enemy ships moved like wolves around their prey. There wasn't much time. "We have to try something," said Zara, her tone defiant despite the pain. Alexei nodded. He couldn't give up, not now. His fingers flew over the console, plotting a desperate route. "We're going to make a risky move," he announced, his voice firm. "We're heading for the nearby asteroid field. It's our only chance to escape." "Are you crazy?" exclaimed an officer. "That area is a natural minefield. We could be destroyed, or we'll be captured here." "I'd rather take the risk," Alexei replied. The crew nodded, determination replacing the fear on their faces. The Estrella Fugaz veered sharply, accelerating toward the asteroid field. "All passengers, hold on to something. It's going to be turbulent," announced Zara over the intercom. The Scar-80H quickly realized the maneuver. Their ships increased speed, trying to intercept the Estrella Fugaz before it reached the asteroids. "Here we go," murmured Alexei, focusing as the ship entered the field. Giant rocks spun around them, each a deadly threat. Alexei maneuvered with precision, weaving and zigzagging between obstacles. The Scar-80H tried to follow, but lacked the same skill. "They're losing us," reported Zara, a glimmer of hope in her voice. "Stay focused." "We're not done yet," replied Alexei, his eyes fixed on the path ahead. A particularly large asteroid appeared before them, spinning slowly on its axis. Alexei saw his opportunity. Maximum acceleration. "Hold on, everyone," he shouted, pushing the engines to their limit. The Estrella Fugaz shot toward the asteroid, passing dangerously close. The Scar-80H tried to follow, but one of their fighters couldn't avoid it in time, crashing into the rock. "We did it!" exclaimed an officer, excitement vibrating in his voice. Alexei let out a sigh of relief. They were still far from safe, but they had gained a reprieve. "Zara, status on the Scar-80H?" he asked, turning to her. "They're retreating, Captain. Seems they don't want to risk more ships in the asteroid field," Zara replied, a tired smile on her face. "Good. Maintain course for Neoterra. Everyone, excellent work. We're not done, but we've won an important battle today," said Alexei, his voice resonating with determination. The Estrella Fugaz continued its journey, wounded but not defeated, carrying the hope of a new beginning for its passengers. The Estrella Fugaz shuddered and creaked, but it kept moving forward. The engines sputtered and the lights flickered, signs of the recent battle. Alexei looked through the main screen, the blurry outlines of the planet Neoterra beginning to come into view. "We're close," he said, with a sigh of relief he could barely contain. Zara, sitting on the makeshift infirmary cot on the bridge, had a pale face, but her eyes still shone with determination. "Can we land?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Yes, we will," Alexei replied, without taking his eyes off the path ahead. Just a bit more. The ship emerged from the Calyx corridor, leaving the Scar-80H behind. The immediate threat had passed, but the danger still lingered in the air. The ship's wounds were deep, and Zara needed urgent medical attention. "Captain, sensors indicate Neoterra's atmosphere is stable. We can proceed with the descent," an officer reported, the tension in his voice slightly relieved by their proximity to their destination. "Excellent. Everyone prepare for landing," ordered Alexei. The refugees, exhausted but hopeful, began to celebrate. Laughter and sobs of relief filled the ship's corridors. The Estrella Fugaz began its descent. Through the windows, Alexei could see the landscape of Neoterra. Towering mountains, vast oceans, and green fields that promised a new beginning. "Hang in there, Zara. We're almost there," he said, turning briefly towards her. "Don't worry about me, Alexei. Just land this ship," Zara responded, with a weak smile. The ship trembled as it entered the atmosphere, the shields vibrating with the friction. Alexei kept a firm control, guiding the Estrella Fugaz towards the surface with expert hands. Finally, with a slight impact, the ship touched down. "We've arrived," he announced, his voice breaking with contained emotion. The refugees erupted in cheers, hugging each other. Alexei looked at Zara, his gaze filled with gratitude and determination. "We did it, Zara. We're safe," he said, gently taking her hand. "Yes, but this is just the beginning," she replied, softly squeezing his hand. "There's a lot to do here." Alexei nodded, looking at the horizon where Neoterra's sun was beginning to rise. The golden rays illuminated the landscape, promising a new dawn for all of them. "I know, but together, we can face whatever comes," he said, his voice firm. Zara smiled, nodding. "Then let's get started." As Neoterra's sun rose, Alexei and Zara stood up, ready to lead the refugees to their new home. The scars of the battle were still fresh, but the hope for a better future shone brightly. The Estrella Fugaz had completed its mission, but the true adventure was just beginning.